sound check? Everybody hear me okay? Okay, because we have speakers, we can do that, but I'd rather just talk out loud if we could. With me tonight is Tyler Nice. He's our systems engineering supervisor. What we want to tell you and update you a little bit is on the projects from the electrical system that are taking place up here, and some things that are going to happen in the future. And then also, why are we doing all these updates? Well, if you look at our strategic mission involves reliability, and it involves resiliency. So all the projects up here are very old, aging equipment. They also have provide a lot of connections to all our customers for our generation resources. So if we have natural disasters, there's some thought we could be able to possibly use some of our generation locally. So there's a couple things we're trying to do with these projects up here. Tyler's going to go ahead and give us a lot more details because he's a much more entertaining speaker than I am. So.
Do my best. Evening, thank you very much for coming and for your attention tonight. It's always a pleasure to come up here, as was said before. So as Rod talked about, I'll review a suite of projects that we're really working on. Some of them we're doing planning right now and doing really immediately. Some of them kind of far off in the distance, and kind of the reasons why and what we feel like we're getting out of it, both us and for the community members. So the high level, it'll be going over what we're doing at Holden Creek and Leeburg Substation. Also on the distribution system itself, we're replacing some equipment. I'll explain that a bit. Also, one of the reasons why we're doing so much work up here, especially at Holden Creek, is to transfer our source from our power lines that we own, transmission lines, to the BPA's lines, and lean on those. Talk about a little bit about that. And also update on some future projects at Walterville and Thurston at the end. So at Holden Creek, we're really proud of this project. We worked for maybe close to 4 years from conception to completing it, and we're really proud of it. One, because we did it on our planned schedule. Once we started execution, we kind of executed it as very close to our plan, and the budgetary wise, we came in at the budget, so that was a success for us. Also, I mean, it's just beautiful to us electrical folk. It's kind of like a piece of art. Not everybody's cup of tea, but we put the diamonds and stuff on there for historic preservation. So really what we have here is this substation is allowing us, and I'll talk about it later, to tap into those BPA lines at some point. Right now, there's no load being carried on this substation. It's ready to go. We commissioned it in April and lit everything up, so it's kind of sitting there with the equipment ready. One of the projects we're going to be, this one? Oh, here we go. 2019, what we're planning right now is at the kind of late stages of the project when we're about ready to energize it. We're amid some studies, and we honestly learned that there were some gaps in our design for the distribution backup system. So we're taking a pause right now, and we're fixing that. And one of the things we're going to be doing is adding a second transformer in the substation. And this is really going to allow us to have redundancy of that equipment. We have provision for it, so it's our kind of design, the equipment to hook it up mostly. So now we're procuring it and going to install that. So we're excited about that. Kind of going along with that, next year you'll see some activity. I guess going back to here, what you'll see going on here is just construction going on next summer. There'll be a very minor outage just to connect that transformer in. There'll be, which would really be only for the Blue River customers because it'll be on that line. There'll also be, probably you may or may not catch it, but some big equipment moving up the road that may take some traffic changes for a few hours. Other than that, we're thinking that this substation here, finishing this off, will be a minor impact. Leeburg, that brings us to Leeburg too. You can see, just getting your bearings, this photo is 126, Highway 126. There's the power plant and there's the substation, so you probably see that all the time when you're peeking through the trees. It's going to be about, in the future, next year, what we're doing is the footprint's going to be decreased in about half. And the reason being is all the equipment that's there right now serving you all is going to be, you're going to be fed from Holden Creek at that point. So a lot of the equipment in the substation will be moved out of there, footprint shrunk. It's going to give some space for the operations crew down there for storage and whatnot. You can see how close we are to the tail race of the power plant. There's transformers with thousands of gallons of oil on there right now, and those will be moved off, so there's an environmental benefit. So that's kind of the link in the chain that has to happen before we really load up our new substation. So right now it's just waiting in the wings. Again, that'll be another similar thing where to do that final connection, you know, and it would be all, we'd be alerted ahead of time and work with, would be another short outage, you know, off normal hours to do those final swaps of the feeders and stuff. Another project in the suite. This one's relating more to kind of just starting to work through the backbone up here of the distribution system. We focused a lot on Holden Creek and talking about BPA lines and the transmission, but going down into the neighborhood power and the feeders that are there, we really want to start focusing on that. So right now we're in the midst of planning and designing replacement of pole top transformers. They're close to end of age. They're older units. Some other benefits is they'll be to our new standard, which has natural ester fluid. You might hear called FR3 in some other places, and it's more environmentally friendly. It'll allow us to do some load balancing when we work through this, which really will give us some headroom and ability to maintain your voltage better. Also, the transformers will be a slightly different design that'll help with that. And then as we go through it, you'll see a lot of crews out and about, and they'll be, as they come across something, and they won't just focus in and only do the transformer. They will, if they find anything else that could be an issue, whether it, you know, is aged or if it's, you know, a rotted pole or a cross arm or something else, they'll go ahead and proactively replace that. So expect to see some of that going down. And each of these would be, you know, a small outage as well, but it would be a very quick outage. Our line crews are really quick on this kind of work here. So and that would be, again, we'd be coordinating with you as we come up to that. So that'll be something for next year. Also, looking at, we're in some studies right now, looking at replacing some other equipment. And one thing to mention is this kind of project with these transformers will be focused kind of down on the lower part of the system by Walterville. And another one is at this upper river situation right now we do have the ability to backfeed if there is a transmission outage or a you know, substation failure. Right now we have a redundant source we can feed you with. And so one thing we're doing is to expand our capability around that. Where right now there's some months in the winter, if the loads are too high, we can't do that. This will allow us to do that, you know, wider scale and close that gap. So we're excited about that to increase our resiliency of the system. Also, looking past when we get these projects complete, the other thing we're in planning is to really remove these transmission lines that will be decommissioned and de-energized at that point. So you can see this is an aerial photo from one of our engineers that happens to own a plane and fly around and take photos for us, which is nice. And you can see the line going through the land and the tree cut there. So it's really giving us some opportunities to relieve EWEB and the community of some you know, effort we have to put into maintaining these. One being tree trimming, obvious one, we'll have to go in and trim the trees. So right now we're just working with our tree folks just to kind of keep it maintained, not do a full-on trimming with this on the horizon. Easements, this will be a case-by-case basis, and staff are making a plan right now. There'll be a variety of different outcomes of different easements. You know, we'll be working with agencies and property owners. You know, there may be situations where we're required to maintain something there for habitat or something else that's left over, and others that we'll look at not having a part of anymore. So that one's going to be a process to go through each one by one, and really with the property owner is going to be the big focus to make a workable deal for each one. Reducing community impact, that one's referring to, you know, there's some spots that either go through someone's property or an example that got some oohs and ahs a little bit a couple years ago was there's the lines that go through Walterville Elementary Field, totally safe, totally to code and constructed properly. But, you know, a bit of an eyesore will open up some beautification, if you will, and some airway, you know, kite flying will be possible. Poles and wires, and then the real part of it, the costly part of it is our transmission lines and all the infrastructure holding them up, and the poles and all the insulators are end of life, and really tapping on that BPA line is allowing us to avoid replacing that. Here's an example of that, zooming in on one. This one's downriver a bit, and it's on an island. River crossing, which on an island has a bit of an access issue. And we discovered this year, what we do is we inspect these regularly. All these poles we go through and itemize the condition, and then we address ones that have an issue right away. And this one that we found this year has some, and the things you'll see is rot typically at the base or insect and bird damage. This one has woodpecker holes all over it. And these poles are actually laminated poles that are hollow inside. So what we're doing is looking at a system to repair that in place. And for this one, for example, poor access. So in the future, when we're done with some of these suites of projects, we'll be able to, remove those. Will be the last piece of work. A little bit of other explanation on the reason why Holden Creek and all the fuss. So there's the beautiful McKenzie rivers to get your bearings, and 126 going up next to the line, and then this green line is the line I'm talking about that EWEB owns. Blue line is the one BPA owns. You can see right here at the end by where Lieberg Power Plant is, they magically cross together, which is serendipitous for us. And you can see as we get Holden Creek done and we tap that on, we can remove those lines. Hopefully it'll be that easy. Just boom, bang, boom. Slide. Also wanted to update you on a recent event we had at one of our substations, at Thurston Substation. And if you were on the fed off of Lieberg, you wouldn't have seen this, but the upriver folks off of that line in our generation unfortunately suffered an outage from this. This is in Thurston Substation. These devices had a failure on one called a potential transformer. We call them PTs. And this is basically on this steel structure. It's a small transformer and a tank of oil with a bushing, and it connects up to the power. And you can see one of these things is not like the other. This one's missing this piece that's right here. Used to be sitting on there, and it had a fault inside there, ignited the oil, and blew it out. So one thing you might ask, what are you doing about that? Well, we were actually able to work with BPA, and so this was a kind of a good success story for us in our response and collaboration with other entities around. So first of all, it was on Labor Day, and so our staff responded, and also we dispatched the call out to the Springfield fire crew for coming out. They fought this fire. The amount of temperature that gets an electrical episode or fault like this is pretty high, so they ended up fighting it for 45 minutes. These pieces together to stop smoldering. So great response by our crews and working with the emergency response. And what we ended up doing, did some switching in the middle of the night to get that back on. Also, working with BPA, we were able to learn that they had stock of this equipment on hand that we could purchase from them. So we did that, and instead of having a 12 to 20 week lead time of that equipment, we got it last Friday, and we were able to fix it last Sunday. So that worked out really well. Instead of having another winter outage is where it would have been ending up to be. That was a good situation for all. And so what we did is we assessed where these kind of PTs are in our system. We have that inventory now, and we're purchasing enough to replace all those on a controlled basis and do some monitoring on them. So we have a plan to address these failure mechanisms for these. So with that, I want to hand it back over to Rodney. He's going to talk about kind of the horizon projects that are out there and what we're working on as well.
Full disclosure too, if you're looking at your agenda, we combined the first two presentations into one. It just seems silly to have two. So some of the things I mentioned we're trying to do here is increase reliability, transferring to the BPA line. We have for a long time now not been able to use the Carmen generation facility to backfeed down to town if the Thurston line was out. Since Carmen's being updated and everything, we're taking a look at the new system to see if we can go ahead and backfeed. So Lane Electric and Blue River and Holden Creek hopefully can benefit from the second source coming down the river. So another thing we're looking at a very high level is tying Holden Creek to Lane Electric's Blue River substation. There's 2 or 3 different ideas floating around out there on how to do that. Seeing if we can make some of that work. Thurston substation, Tyler showed you the location for that. Those other 2 green lines going further to the west. If as we rebuild Thurston substation and redo that, we'll be able to get rid of the rest of the 69 kV lines. Some of you may ask, what are we going to do with the land that those transmission lines were on? The answer is a good question, and it depends upon where it's at. If it's under FERC jurisdiction, there's any number of kind of things that could happen. Maybe it just starts growing over on its own. But in general, we don't have a good plan for that or a good strategy because there's so many different things involved in it. So there will be a decommissioning process that will take place once we
we get to that, and that we'll be communicating that as well.
The other thing I wanted to do real quick is mention, back in the back is Shane Tennyson. He's one of our foresters. So he's the guy who will come along and trim vegetation. Feel free to take advantage of his presence to talk to him about trees. Also, Nick Nevins is back there, and he's our telecommunications person. So we've been doing some fiber work downtown, and he can talk to you a little bit about some of the fiber work we do. So. If you have any questions about any of this, be sure and email myself or Tyler. I do answer emails. We're happy to talk about this kind of stuff. In fact, that's all we like to do is talk about electrical stuff. So, or you can always email there's a couple email sites, and the emails always wind their way back to the right people. So.
Perfect. Right on time.
Yeah. Questions?
I think we're going to save questions till the end, but we do have 4 minutes on this. If somebody has a quick question they want to ask, now's a good time. Well,
I'd just like to say I had some communication with Rod relative to RF interference on 126 after line work was done up here, and he and his staff and his crews were very accommodating, and they took care of the whole thing. So now my wife can listen to 590 all the way to
Tyler?
Yes.
We recently had some communication from some upriver people regarding outages, and part of the staff response described operation of Carmen Smith in a very partially loaded condition when it has to island and supply the power only to Blue River and just small amounts of load. Is this going to be this partial loading and the potential damage that it can cause to the generator going to be an issue going forward after the plant is rebuilt, and how are we looking into partial loading as a potential option for operation of that facility?
Sure. Yeah, we're working with our generation colleagues on that, and I'm not a mechanical engineer, but I will say that the problem is totally mechanical.
Stand up, Mark.
Defend it.
I will confess, in this case, Tyler is correct. So what he's referring to is low load operation of our Carmen generating units is damaging mechanically. The generators don't mind it so much, but the turbine itself, the blades that turn his generator do not like that low load condition. It creates a lot of cavitation on the runner blades, which leads to vibration of the shaft up to the generator. And so that piece of it can create issues for the generator, but it's primarily derived from the mechanical system that doesn't like the low loading condition. It's designed for, it has a operational range that doesn't reach down as low as the Blue River load gets.
There's some things we have going for us. You know, we'll have to do some studies to make sure that it's not going to damage this, but you know, we're in the process of getting new ones in the next few years. So we got to look at those new curves. You know, we're really adding load onto that line by putting, you know, the stuff that was on the load that was on Lieberg on there. So that's kind of changing your load aspect. And there's ways around it that are a little more exotic, like putting, you know, load banks in that would increase the load and things like that. So I think there's some options, but that's the things we have to kind of itemize and look at, because those are undoubtedly one of the most expensive pieces.
So to be clear, this would be like if a storm event were to occur and the upper McKenzie River would be isolated from the rest of the grid, these generators could keep the lights on up here in the valley for a week or whatever it took to, and so do you think the plant could serve this load for a week without trouble?
So we've got 2 new runners coming from General Electric that will be installed in 2021 and 2022. Those will have a new operating range, different than the operating range of the existing units. Tyler will take a look at that. So we'll say we can go down to this many megawatts of load, and we won't void any warranties that GE is associating on their turbine runner. He'll look at that load and relative to that the units need to put out relative to what Blue River Lieberg demands, determine if it's within that range. If it's not, this load bank he's talking about would increase the load. Basically, they're heaters, so you would artificially increase the load to get the turbine into that happy place where it's not a damaging loading condition.
Or I'm sure the community would be happy to turn on the electricity, extra electricity.
You might get that alert, everybody turn everything on all at once.
Well, thank you very much. And so to keep on schedule, nothing worse than having two engineers, we've got the offense and the defense.